it's going to go up to 3.3% next year. And this money is going to be set aside for lots of sort of new techie type spending on hardware. He's raised the possibility of what he's calling a T-dome system, a sort of a Taiwanese answer to Iron Dome in Israel, which is the sort of current vogue form of military expenditure, sort of defending against missile attack.
Taiwan has announced plans to spend an extra $40 billion on its defence as China ramps up military and political pressure on the island. President Lai Ching-te warned that Beijing had increased military drills and harassment and aimed to seize the country by force by 2027. Well, I'm joined now by the Times' China correspondent Richard Spencer, who's just returned from Taiwan. Hello, Richard.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us. How big a rise in spending is this? Is it a lot more than they're already spending?
It is actually when you look at it as part of their sort of overall long-term budget rises. So President Lai wants to get defence spending up to 5% of GDP by 2030. I mean, that's a figure that this idea of defence spending as a percentage of GDP is something we're becoming used to in this country with and in NATO generally, with President Trump demanding we all get it above 2%. 5% obviously is a lot more than that, and it's a lot more than it's spending at the moment, which is about 2.5%. So it's going to go up to 3.3% next year, and this money is going to be set aside for lots of sort of new techie type spending on hardware. He's raised the possibility of what he's calling a T-dome system, a sort of a Taiwanese answer to Iron Dome in Israel, which is the sort of current vogue form of military expenditure, sort of defending against missile attack.
And how much support does Taiwan currently have from the US? Is Taiwan in the same situation as Europe, where it's being pressured to pay more for its own defence?
Absolutely, yes. So Taiwan is both is like sort of NATO plus without being NATO, and it's obviously under much sort of more specific threat from China, even than NATO is from Russia at the moment. You could say there are direct threats by China to reunify Taiwan, as they put it. It's less NATO in the sense that America is not in a formal alliance with Taiwan, and the relationship between America and Taiwan is much more of a sort of a nudge and a wink. America sort of recognizes Beijing as the capital of China, not Taipei as the capital of China. It doesn't support Taiwanese independence. It basically wants a quiet life, but of course is facing this threat from China. And there's always been a kind of implicit assumption that as a Taiwanese ally, America would help. So Biden made that much more explicit. President Biden, he said America probably would defend Taiwan if it's attacked by China, unprovoked attack by China. Trump is as with everything else, says many more contradictory things. But one thing that is sure is he wants Taiwan to sort of contribute more defense spending itself, as he's said with NATO.
Has China been ramping up the pressure on Taiwan recently? Has the picture there significantly changed?
It has changed over the last few years. I think that's definitely the case. President Xi is much more aggressive, much more assertive, much more nationalist in a Chinese sense. He has massively modernized the Chinese military. That's a very key element. When he came into power in 2012, he basically discovered that Chinese military wasn't really fit for purpose. It was very big. But in terms of actually doing anything complicated like invading an island, it didn't have enough missiles. It didn't have enough transport planes, for example. So he's now put China in a position where it could invade Taiwan pretty much. He'd set that date of 2027 for readiness to invade Taiwan. He's ordered lots and lots of military exercises around Taiwan, which are very threatening. On the other hand, the assessment by most people is that that's still his sort of posture, if you like. He wants to deter Taiwan from formally declaring independence, which would be a massive blow to his prestige, and that he hasn't actually decided to invade preemptively, if you like. So there is a lot of pressure. It's noticeable that it's reduced. The number of military exercises reduced in the last few weeks since President Trump has started making nicer comments about China, and since he met President Trump in South Korea in October.
Look, so finally then, if China were to invade Taiwan, how much of a fight could Taiwan presently put up? Not much of a fight, I'm sensing.
On its own, it would be pretty much overwhelmed. I don't think there's much doubt about that. There are lots of different ways of looking at those. It's not a simple matter. It's very difficult to actually, land on Taiwan and invade it. It's a mountainous place. It would be difficult for China. It would be very difficult if America was there in force, obviously. So there are various questions like, how much damage would China want to do to Taiwan in order to invade it? So obviously, when we're talking about the T-dome system, I mean, the critics, President Li's many critics say, well, that's a bit of a waste of money, because if China wants to level Taiwan with missiles, it could do so, with or without a T-dome system. I mean, leaving aside its nukes, it's got, a huge missile arsenal, pretty much all of it ranged at Taiwan. And if it wanted to destroy Taiwan, it could do so.
Yeah.
But obviously, the assumption is that it says Taiwan's part of China. It doesn't want to actually destroy it to take it. So then there are all sorts of questions about how fast could America get there to defend Taiwan? How much would the threat of a guerrilla war supported by America after a landing, how much of a deterrence would that be to China? So it is quite a complicated military exercise to think about all these things. Though China obviously on its own is much bigger than Taiwan and could pretty much destroy it.
Richard Spencer, Times China correspondent. Thank you very much indeed.
In response to an unprecedentedly severe situation, the National Security Team has planned 2 major action plans to comprehensively address urgent national security threats and fully safeguard democratic Taiwan, achieve a high level of combat readiness for the joint forces of the national military before 2027 to effectively deter threats from China. The second goal is to further build a highly resilient and comprehensive deterrent defense capability by 2033. The ultimate goal is to establish a national defense force capable of permanently safeguarding democratic Taiwan. Since President Trump assumed his second term in office, Taiwan's cooperation with the United States has not been interrupted, stopped, or diminished, but has continued to strengthen. So we are confident in the future relationship between Taiwan and the United States, because it will benefit common interests of Taiwan and the United States, as well as the overall interests of the region.